Picture the scene. It's June the 4th, 1933. It's a blisteringly hot day. High up on the South Downs, a very famous figure has come on a secret visit to see a garden. These are gardens that would go on to be world famous. A great, great victory for beauty over almost impossible odds. For now, our visitor spends a few hours in serenity. At one point, he turns to his host and sighs, "How peaceful this is." In 1933, these are prophetic words. For the man on this visit is Edward, Prince of Wales. 2 years earlier, he'd had his fateful meeting with Wallis Simpson. And here today, he is just 3 years away from abdicating the throne and plunging the royals into crisis. For now, he simply enjoys his secret visit high up on the hill. Many people know a little bit about Highdown Gardens and how Sir Frederick and Lady Sybil turned this magnificent 10-acre gardens into a real triumph by growing exotics from around the world on chalk soil, something that was thought impossible to do. So Frederick became obsessed with his garden, obsessed with planting. He became a breeder. He brought plants from around the world. He sponsored trips by intrepid plant hunters to the Far East and China to bring back lots of exotics, like this Acer griseum, a really rare example, one of the finest in the UK, or the paperbark maple as it's called. A beautiful example of what's being preserved here in Highdown. But there's another story, certainly less well known, about the social circles Sir Frederick and Lady Sybil moved in. The royals, bankers, all of society came here to Highdown. And there's a fascinating story to be told about that social history. It was just here that the Prince of Wales sat and just enjoyed those few moments in the sun that really hot July day. It's now, of course, a new pub and a hotel, completely separated from the gardens. But remember, back in the day, this house was connected to the garden. And as I say, the Prince of Wales would sit here and while away the time with the dog on his lap. We know about that day mainly because Lady Sybil left a scrap of notepaper describing it in archives. So Frederick only ever talked about gardens, never talked about the people who came to visit. But we have a clue about that day from Lady Sybil. In that note, Sybil talks about how the prince talked incessantly of gardens. And she asked him, "Well, how long have you been interested in gardens?" 3 months, he laughed. Mr. Buckman, the head gardener, took him around the Highdown Gardens, and afterwards she wrote this about him. Several times he said how peaceful this is. The prince seemed to know people personally in all walks of life, quite ordinary people and quite ordinary things. He is in fact an ordinary person himself, but with rather more than ordinary personality and quite an extraordinary zest for life. As if he's concealing a determination to enjoy every possible minute of life as other people enjoy them, while he still has his liberty. Later on in 1972, in an interview with the Worthing Herald, she said that soon after that visit, the Prince of Wales seemed to lose interest in gardens. Mrs. Simpson, she said, was a rather worldly person. The pictures of the Duke are among a number that reveal an astonishing social history of Highdown, hidden deep within the Sussex Record Office at Chichester, in a visitor's book that Lady Sybil kept from 1918 to 1968, when she finally handed over the house and gardens to Worthing Borough Council. In the book, everyone who came for a weekend or came for a stay, great plant hunters like Frank Kingdon Ward. Frederick Stern was the son of Jewish bankers, so names like the Rothschilds and the Montefioris are full in this book. But further in, you start to see emerging pictures of even more famous people who came to stay, like the Duke and other royals. So after the Prince of Wales, next the following year comes Elizabeth, Duchess of York, posed in the garden to visit Stern for a secret weekend. Not surprising that the Duchess of York was here. She was, the Queen Mother as was a lion And this whole land around here used to be owned by the Lyon family. In fact, it was the Lyon estate that first rented this property and this land to Sir Frederick when he first moved here. One thing that's worth noticing about all these pictures you'll see is that Sir Frederick was so obsessed with this garden, there isn't a single picture of any of these famous guests in the house. Instead, they're posed in the garden as the garden develops, as he wins his battle against the chalk. And what you see is none of these royals, none of these famous people ever dominate the picture. Sir Frederick positions them in the garden to show off his garden as well as his famous guests. In a similar picture, Sir Frederick poses with the Queen of Romania. What the Queen of Romania was doing here, we know not. As I said before, Sir Frederick never ever spoke about these things. However, what you see again is just how much work he has to do to conquer this chalk face and bring his exotics to bear here. In 1936, Elizabeth, Duchess of York, visited again, this time with her husband Albert, and posed with members of the Bowes-Lyon family and with Lady Stern, just 9 months before Albert ascended the throne after the abdication. In October 1936, the abdication crisis narrative at Highdown is completed when Mary, the Queen Mother, visits Stern to plant a hornbeam in the gardens. In a picture in the archive, you see Mary, rather stern-faced, and to her side, a cheeky grin Stern as she plants the hornbeam. The picture was posed just 17 days before her son, Edward, now the Duke of Windsor, and his new wife, Wallis, went to visit Hitler in his alpine retreat of Berghof and allegedly made the Nazi salute. It's a trip that she cannot have been unaware he was planning to make as she posed in the Highdown Gardens to plant this hornbeam. But it's not just royals, because here, unmistakably, is a former Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, taken in 1926 with his daughter Meghan. We don't know why he was here again, but we do know that Sir Frederick was a big supporter of the Liberal Party and had accompanied Lloyd George to the Versailles Peace Conference after the First World War. Notice once again that what you see here is the unmistakable image of Lloyd George, but also the unmistakable pride in the garden. So you can see that Highdown, as well as being an internationally important garden, a great garden, a beautiful garden, it's also got a fascinating and barely told social history too, of people visiting the Sterns, of royals coming on secret visits, of prime ministers. It's a story that's only just being told. And one of the things that Worthing Borough Council wants to do with the money from the Heritage Lottery Fund that it's been awarded, as well as, quite rightly, conserving and propagating the plants that are at risk, and they are at risk, is to tell visitors some of this story about this fascinating house high up on Highdown Hill.